Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Malicious Compliance. Story 1. Put fuel in it. Cousin sent me this today, thought it belonged here. For context, he's a refueler at a mine in Australia. So the crew boilie, welder fabricator, calls me up last night, says can you put fuel in the crane tonight please, it's low. Yeah mate, I'll catch ya later, no dramas. So I call him up few hours later and say I'm on my way, where are you? He goes EX106, a digger. I said yeah mate, where is that? I'm not sure. He repeats I'm at EX106. I said I get that, but where is EX106? I haven't been to it this round, so not sure where I need to come to. Again he states EX106 and I reply same thing, and he doesn't respond. Thankfully a fitter, diesel mechanic, comes on radio and lets me know where to go. Righto, I'm coming past there shortly, see ya soon. So I rock on up, park my truck, get up on the crane, open the fuel tank cap, and what do I see? It's full, about 1 centimeter from top of the 150L, 40 gal, tank. It wasn't a drama, it was on my route anyway, and possibly a faulty fuel gauge, no harm done. The boilie wanders over and goes, so are you going to put fuel in it now? This pissed me off a little, so I said mate, it's full, maybe other service cart did it, but it's full now. Instead of just thanking me for coming round and having a chat, what does he do? He kicks up this little dance shouting, do you see tire tracks from another service truck? I've been here all night and it hasn't come, it needs fuel. I said again mate, it's full. It's about 1 centimeter from the top of the tank, it's full. Have a look. He shouts no it's not, the gauge is saying it's almost empty, so put some damn fuel in it, and does his little dance again. One more time I said the tank is full, but he again demands I put more fuel in it. Malicious compliance kicks in and I went right on bud, no worries. I climb off the crane, go round to my truck, back it up alongside the crane, pulled out the hose, climbed back onto crane, and started pumping. At about 4 liters it started just spraying a little fuel out, by 6 it starts overflowing, but I keep on pumping until I got to nearly 14 liters, by which time it had run all over the platform and all down the side of the crane. I turned to him and said, you happy it's full? He finally admits, oh maybe it's got a faulty fuel gauge. Oh, you think? He then goes, there's fuel all over it now. I looked at him and said, not my problem bud. Go get the water blaster trailer and clean it yourself. Got in my truck and drove off. Story 2. Don't remind you about your passport renewal. Cool. This happened a few years ago when my now husband and I first started dating. We were going on holiday in May in order to attend his friend's destination wedding. I don't mind his friends, but for the purposes of this story, I have to say they are more his friends than mine. He needed his passport renewed, which needs to be done every 10 years here in the UK. Knowing that we had this trip coming up and that his passport needed renewing, I reminded him in, I think February, that it was a job that he needed to do. I think the third time I reminded him about it, possibly sometime in April, he slightly snapped at me, or was at least a little off, and basically said, you don't need to keep reminding me, I will sort it out. Fine. Even though this was still early in the relationship, I had already noticed that my boyfriend, as he then was, is wonderful in many ways, but he is a bit of a procrastinator and especially has a tendency to put off boring admin type jobs such as this. I can't say I blame him, but I am the sort of person who gets things like that done as soon as I notice them, because otherwise they will be on my mind. But, he was absolutely right. This was a trip to see his friends, my passport didn't need updating, it really wasn't my job to remind him about his or chase him about it. I didn't especially care what happened either way, the trip was extremely cheap and the travel insurance might have even covered cancelling it. Malicious compliance activate. Well, wouldn't you know it? Something like 5 days before we were due to leave, he sheepishly comes to me and says he still hasn't done anything about his passport. I don't know what it's like elsewhere, but I think standard lead times for passports here are at least a few weeks. So, he ends up doing a priority request, or whatever it's called, where they will fast-track your application. I think from memory the basic application is 79 and then priority on top was another 150 and possibly more for fast shipping. I think the whole thing ended up costing him around 250 with everything in together, when it should have been 79. My memory is blurry, but I think he also had to get new passport photos taken and authenticated quickly too, which I seem to remember was really stressful and rushed for him as well. We did get to go on the trip as everything came through the day before we left. He apologized for having snapped at me and for asking not to be reminded about it, but by that point I wasn't even angry, and honestly felt bad for how much stress and expense he'd been through. He has improved how he does his boring life admin since then. Story 3. Improving my metrics. Many years ago, I was working for a large multinational information technology service company, in a team helping to service one of the company's largest local clients. As one of the team's senior members, I took it upon myself to tackle the more challenging cases assigned to the group. Due to their complexity, and the fact that it sometimes took a while for these to be completed, the number of cases I typically completed per week was lower than many of the others in the team. One day, my new manager, who I'll call Bob, called me into his office and asked me why my numbers were lower than the rest of my team, 30 vs the typical 100 cases per week. I explained my approach, but this wasn't good enough for him, and he demanded that I improve my metrics. So, I gave Bob what he asked for. By the end of the following week, I had absolutely smashed everyone else's numbers, completing over 300 cases, or more than 3 times anyone else in the team. When Bob saw my metrics at the end of the week, his jaw literally dropped. He was ecstatic and seriously impressed. "How did you achieve such massive throughput?" he asked with amazement in his voice. So, I told him my dirty little secret. Over the week I had cherry-picked all of the easiest, quickest cases I could find from the group queue in order to improve my metrics. He was not a happy camper, but I had proved my point. Numbers don't always tell the whole story. After that, I went back to taking on the difficult cases, and Bob never complained about my metrics again. Story 4. Ask and ye shall receive. I'm known in the family to be a control freak about preparing food. In fact, in my family, there are 2 dinners in the year that all members come, in all 30 people, and before I took over, all dinners were extremely late. There was always some problem with seasoning or poor preparation. I'm organized, and for every meal, I have a spreadsheet with everything I need to make a huge-scale dinner. At first, they didn't respect it, but after seeing that my method was useful, everyone joined in and allowed me to be the head of the organization. Since then, dinners are ready on time, everyone praises and repeats the dish, not very common. It's 1 to 2 days for preparing meals. I don't ask them to help me, because I know I'm serious with organization, but if the person wants to, I ask them to respect the process. Another fact, my mother was a cook, for 1 year, and my sil is studying gastronomy. The situation. Sunday was the half-yearly dinner and I was the head as usual. Would help me, my sil, mother, aunt, and uncle. This would be Sil's first family dinner and she offered to help. During the preparation, my mother started to do several things wrong, and every time I said something, she said something like, "Stay calm, a wrong thing will not lead to anything." The problem is that she did so much wrong, skipping so many necessary steps in the food that most things I had to redo or give a second look. She continued to help even though I said it wasn't necessary. I broke down when I just commented something about steps with my sil and she corrected me. I was going to comment, but my mother said, "I think you better cool off in the pool and let those with experience sort it out." I accepted, grabbed a glass of wine, the spree's heat with me, and spent the whole day in the pool, ignoring when asked to come back. So, dinner was late, poorly seasoned, undercooked, and no one had a second dish. My mother later said that I ruined dinner and humiliated our family in front of relatives in revenge. I shouldn't take that serious, because it was a silly family joke. BTW, I love making these dinners, and yes, My mother's silly behavior is common. Ida? Someone asked for examples of what she did wrong. She put too much salt on one of the meats and it was inedible. There had to be 10 of something for the food and she cut it in half because it was too much. It wasn't. She started to make rice very early, and we use the pan first for other food and the rice is last because it is the biggest and heaviest pan. My spreadsheet basically has the amounts and how long each cooking ingredient goes. I point out when they get the quantities wrong, too much or too little, or when they start making food that is for a long time before or after. Story 5. Delicious meal. So today my mom made some leftover chicken for dinner. Me and her had already been fighting all day with her making my every move sound wrong. I was just studying for my physics exam and finishing up my extended essay. I got myself a plate of food and took a bite of the chicken. I don't know why, but I just really didn't like it. It smelled odd and the general chicken taste was not correct. I just didn't like it. I told my mom, and she started yelling at me again about how ungrateful I am and how terrible of a doctor I am. I was hurt by the constant yelling, so I ended up crying, which only made her yell more. When I finally gave up and started eating the chicken, she told me not to and to throw it out. She told me, you make dinner tomorrow that you like since everyone else has a horrible sense of taste. She then stormed out and left me crying as my stomach started to hurt. I later realized this chicken was 4 days old, my mom's boyfriend told me, but no one but me got a bad stomach. While I was sad, I decided to take her comment to heart. I'm 16, turning 17 in June and it's almost the end of the month. I have used almost all of my minimum wage salary, but I still went out to buy ingredients for my favorite salad, some nice focaccia, and good meat. Now, that little amount of money is gone, and next month I'll be having vacation, so less money. Now my mom is irritated but doesn't say anything to me as she has to pay for all my expenses for the next 2 weeks. Update: I can understand why I may sound like a mean teen, I would think so as well seeing this, so I fully support backlash for that. However, this has been going on since I was 8. I have a twin brother who's being treated perfectly fine, but since my dad left I was the bad kid. I don't want to sound all feel bad for me, but you can check out a previous post as reference to a more extreme instance with my mom which I've updated. Thank you for the honestly in the Story 6. Want to report suspicious mail? Okay. This happened during 2022 till March 2023. I was working for a large corporation as a remote employee and the employer had a highly active cyber head of security. He tested us time and time again to see who would fall for one, and then make them do an online course. Middle of 2022, I started getting instructions that I must go through online training, with a link to the course, but the sender had a different domain of that the company used, so I flagged it as spam per instructions. The emails kept coming monthly, and I've flagged them according to policy. March 2023, I haven't visited the main office for nearly a year. I got a message from same sender, telling me that my company access card has been blocked until I completed the trainings, so I flagged it as well. But I became suspicious, so I entered the company new portal, and clicked on the training page, which forwarded me to that domain. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.